1.
Are the judges ready?
Yes.
The timer?
Yep.
And the affirmative team? Then let us begin. Quote, "The trouble with it is that intelligent, cultivated people, the very people who might be expected to have liberal opinions, never do mix with the poor. For what do the majority of educated know about poverty?" George Orwell. Hello, my name is Justin Rosser, and today my partner, Dalton Urich, and I stand against the affirmative's resolution that the government has the obligation to lessen the economic gap between its citizens. He has proposed this by taxing or maybe some other means. The affirmative's team's value is equity, which is good on the surface, but evil beneath. I'd also like to point out that the affirmative has used biblical quotes, which should not be taken into as evidence at this point. Observation 1, definitions. We accept the affirmative team's definitions and would like to add some of our own. Obligation, the state of being forced to do something because it is your duty or because of the law. Number 2, utilitarianism, the doctrine that actions are right even if they are useful for the benefit of the majority. Definition 3, individualism, a social theory favoring freedom of action for individuals over collective state control. Number 4, communism, a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. Socialism, a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Source, the Oxford Dictionary of English. Observation 2, value. Our value is individualism. Utilitarianism in equity does not allow for hard work and its reward. Individualism does. Who among you doesn't want the ability to work hard and profit for what you make? Quote, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Steal a fish from one guy and give it to another, and you keep doing that on a daily basis and you'll make that guy pissed off. But you'll make the second guy lazy and dependent upon you. Then you can tell the second guy that the first guy is greedy and wanting to keep the fish he caught. Then the second guy will cheer for you to steal more fish. Quote, Larkin Rose, author of political books such as The Iron Web and The Most Dangerous Superstition. If you take away a person's ability to work for a reward, you take away a person's motivation to work at all. Observation 3, criterion. The criterion we will use to measure individualism is the good old American way. While you may laugh at this, think about it. Does not everyone have dreams? Are all those dreams the same? Of course not. But they're all linked by one thing, the pursuit of happiness. Money does not buy happiness, but money can buy things that make you happy. And you can also do things that satisfy the soul, like give to the charity and help the poor. Observation 4, contentions. Contention 1, contrary point. I would like to point out that the affirmative team has argued that his value is, or that his contention is equity, or his value is equity. And he has gone on and used equality in certain points. I'll quote in his contention number 1, where he says, even Thomas Jefferson argued consistency that inequality could undermine the public. Inequality and equity are very different things. He has argued in his quote that inequality could return to the United States, but to rule by aristocratically if the government wasn't conveyed. But that is not inequity. Inequality is the state of being right and having the same rights. Inequity is the state of fairness. Contention 2, logical fallacy. In every day and in speech, we should try to strive to be without flaw. One great way of doing this is applying logic to every aspect of life. While utilitarianism and equity itself isn't a logical fallacy, well, utilitarianism itself is a logical fallacy. Ad populum. Quote, a mob is capable of getting at you in different ways. If a mob has violence on its mind, then it is a matter of sheer physical force. But mobs do other things besides threaten your physical person. Sometimes they just stare at you and move on. The effect of this truth through counting noses approach is to make one think that whatever it is that all people are doing must be good, true, and beautiful. Ad populum, it may be the most destructive but most potent destructive fallacy on the planet. For example, I have seen otherwise intelligent people swayed by mobs to affirm that men can marry men, that dismembering infants in the womb is a positive good, and many other heinous positions embraced solely because of the mob's urgent panting, and not on any true reasonable authority. Douglas Wilson, a pastor who has written more than 50 books and has debated Christopher Hitchens and Andrew Sullivan, 2 renowned critical thinkers. Though many plead that they are unfairly given their pay and should have equal monetary status by taxing the billionaires, the truth is, just because most cry out does not mean it is the right course of action. Source, Dr. Ransom's bestiary of adorable fallacies. Contention 3, utilitarianism's true self. Let's pretend the entire utilitarianism philosophy wasn't fallacious. Think about it. What does utilitarianism promise? The same end for all people, no matter what you do. Does this sound like something familiar? Yeah, socialism and communism. And what does communism promise as a result of participation? Quote, then the world will be for the common people, and the sounds of happiness will reach the deepest springs. Ah, come, people of every land, how can you not be roused? Karl Marx, a man who needs no introduction. Could you not apply the definition of utilitarianism to communism and socialism? Contention 4, the end result. Now let's step back for a second. To avoid the fallacy of a straw man fallacy, let me clarify my point. The affirmative may argue my points have nothing to do with the government's obligation to change the economic gap, but however, this is not the case. He argues this resolution is a utilitarian principle. It is in fact a utilitarian principle, but one that relates to the economy and the government controlling the economy. While our current government has a large hand in our economic system, one might argue too large, it does not take money from our citizens and give it to others in pure form on the basis of how much money you make. Though it does tax, our government does not redistribute wealth, which is a core principle of socialism and communism. Therefore, judges, please keep in mind that the negative team's true agenda, though he may not say it, is socialism and communism. Now let's return to contention 3. The end result of the negative's resolution, which is socialism and communism, is always terrible. There are currently 22 states and countries that use a socialistic or communistic structure. There have been over 115 countries that have tried it only in the last 200 years, and they are now only in memory. And by the way, those 22 countries that are trying it now have only been established in the last 50 years. So what do you think will happen if we embrace this system? Quote, socialism is an alternative to capitalism as potassium cyanide is to water. Ludwig von Mises, an economist and author of economic literature. Source, Marx and Tapings by Daniel Little and all these countries' constitutions. Contention 5, large government programs. Okay, ignoring the entire point concerning the evil of the affirmative's resolution value, let us consider large government programs by themselves. I would argue that the government collecting the rich people's money in the states and giving out to those who have less is a considerably large government program. So for context, we should look at other programs that are also large. Our nation's healthcare system, which I feel needs little explanation. How about the Veterans Affairs? And what about the education and the system of education in our country? All right. I urge the judges to side with the negative team. Ultimately, the government is not obligated to lessen the economic gap because it is not in its jurisdiction. My partner and I are not arguing for the neglecting of the poor. That is the last thing on our minds. But taking care of the poor should be handled by private citizens, for that is the only way it can be done well. Rockefeller and Carnegie gave away over half their fortunes before they died. Bill Gates has a foundation literally devoted to giving away his money. This is the only successful way to take care of the poor. The affirmative resolution is also false because it is the open practice of socialism and communism, which can never succeed in our world. Judges, my partner and I tell you that the affirmative is arguing for socialism and communism, but he will never really openly say that because he knows it will turn you off to his points. So I ask that you delve deeply into what he is saying because you will see the echoed words of Marx. I leave you with this quote from Ronald Reagan. How do you tell a communist? Well, it's someone who reads Marx and Lenin. And how do you tell an anti-communist? Someone who understands Marx and Lenin. I now stand ready for cross-examination.